Hey, this is Big John Summers, and I want to thank you so much for listening to the Tennessee History Nerd. By the way, if you enjoyed this episode, I want you to know that there's a lot more content waiting for you out there. We're adding new episodes every week, and we're working our way across the whole state of Tennessee, covering stories from prehistory all the way into the 20th century. So if you like Tennessee history, there's already a catalog of stories out there for you to explore. So scroll back through those previous episodes. You might just find something you weren't expecting. And again, thanks so much for listening. Got Bob Keast here with me today. Really appreciate you taking this time to be with me today. Allow me to be with you here at your place at the museum here for the Tennessee River Freshwater Pearl Museum on Kentucky Lake at Birdsong Resort and Marina. Thanks so much for your time on that. Can you tell me a little bit as we begin how you got involved in doing this?
Well, first of all, I'm 75 years old, born in 1950, and my mom and dad brought me here to Birdsong when I was 10 years old, and I've been here ever since. Did a few years in college. The Freshwater Pearl Farm first started with a man by the name of John R. Latendresse, and during World War II, he came back with his Japanese wife, and they had a family, raised their children here in Camden. He and his wife came to my mother and father and my late wife, Janice, in the late 70s and said, we want to put a pearl farm. Well, in the late 70s, we still had the Polaroid camera that you squeezed the Vaseline over the white picture, or the black and white picture. So, my dad first thing said, no, you can't grow pearls in Tennessee. My wife and my mother voted to let the pearl farm come in. So we're a farm, we're a museum. We also offer tours, okay? And then we have this beautiful jewelry showroom where you can actually purchase pearls grown right here on the Tennessee River. So when Mr. and Mrs. Latendresse voted with our family to put the pearl farm in, then it took 6 years for the first pearl to come out. And then that's about 1985 approximately. And Fred Ward of the National Geographic came down. He stayed here with us for 6 weeks, and he filmed and took notes, and then spent about 6 weeks over in Toba in Japan at Mikimoto's Pearl Farm. And we have 38 pages in the 1985 National Geographic magazine. Well, that made everybody in America wonder, how do you grow pearls in Tennessee? So during that time period, we had a governor by the name of Lamar Alexander, and he put a bill through the House and the Senate and made the Tennessee River Freshwater Pearl as the state of Tennessee's official gem. So you say, well, what is a gem? Well, it's a ruby, an emerald, sapphire, a diamond, and all of those gems come from the earth. Well, God created the animal, okay, and the mollusk, which is the mussel, the oyster, the snail, the conch, they're all underwater animals. So when God created the animal, he put this breed in the water, okay? So this is an animal that grows a pearl, all righty? So in 1979, we became the state's official gem, okay, which gives us a lot of opportunity for more and more education, all righty? So Mr. and Mrs. Latendresse built the farm in the late 70s, early 80s, and then when Mr. Latendresse passed away in 2000, then his wife and daughter came to me and said, Bob, Judy, Janice, do you want to buy the farm? So we bought the farm. So we've been running the farm since 2000, and it's been a long run, and we've had a lot of tourists. We're a tourist destination. We're in the top 25 of the state of Tennessee. So you've got Dolly, and then you got Elvis, and then you got the Country Music Hall of Fame, and the list gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, we're thrown in there with all the rest of the... And I always say, with Memphis being Elvis and Dolly being Sevier County, that we're sandwiched in between. So we're like the center part of the Oreo cookie. We're halfway between Memphis and Gatlinburg. And, of course, Dolly does a lot of great things for Tennessee, and so does the Elvis family with Graceland and all that they've got going on in Memphis. So we're right on I-40. So we have our own exit. It's exit 133, Birdsong exit. This is Birdsong Road, Birdsong Creek, and of course we're originated as Birdsong Resort and Marina. It's been here since 1948. So shortly after World War II, the Tennessee River was impounded in, I want to say, 46 or 47, and they had built Pickwick Lake down around Savannah, Tennessee, and they had built TVA. Excuse me, let me give them credit. TVA had built a Kentucky Dam up at Gilbertsville, just a little bit east, about 25 miles of Paducah. And the Tennessee River is one of the major rivers that's navigable in the world that flows north. The Nile in Egypt, and the Thames in London, and the St. John down around in the middle part of Florida. These are, and the Cumberland. These are the Cumberland River coming out of Nashville. These are some of the rivers that flow north that are navigable. They're buoyed, the Coast Guard, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And so TVA was created in 1933 under Franklin D. Roosevelt's administration, the New Deal. And it created TVA to be an asset for America to make electricity, to provide a navigable waterway, and to prevent flooding. So it took them from 1933 all the way up to the World War II era to build all the dams all the way from Norris, Tennessee, way up there, all the rivers that confluence, and the river begins, the Tennessee begins right near the foot of the Neyland Stadium where the University of Tennessee plays football. That's the beginning of the river, or what we call the source. Okay, so the source runs all the way down through East Tennessee, down through Chattanooga, northern Alabama, northern Georgia, northern Mississippi, and then it turns north there at Savannah, at Pickwick. And we're the largest body of the Tennessee River system, Kentucky Lake. We have 2,300 miles of shoreline, and we go through, again, from the northern part of Mississippi all the way through to the western part of Kentucky, all the way up to Paducah, Gilbertsville, where the Tennessee confluences with the Ohio River. That's coming from Pittsburgh and Indianapolis, Louisville, and comes into Paducah, and then confluences with the Mississippi over in Cairo, Illinois. So you can virtually get anywhere in the world from the Tennessee River, right here on Kentucky Lake. Launch your boat and get on the rivers, and got a big credit card, so you got plenty of gas and food and lodging. And we've had a lot of people travel all over 40 states that joins the oceans and the Mississippi, and they call it the Great Loop. So,
and you don't even have to go now up to the Ohio River if you don't want to. You can go back the other direction, take the Tom Bigby Waterway down through Mobile if you want to.
That's right. From here, going south, or going upstream. When you get down to Pickwick, you actually can turn right at Pickwick and go through Yellow Creek in Iuka, Mississippi, right on the border, and hit the Tom Bigby, and that'll shoot you right on down to the Mobile area, Mobile Bay, and get right into the Gulf of America, okay? The new Gulf of America. Not the Gulf of Mexico, but the Gulf of America. And those folks that do that, then they go through the Florida and get on the east side of Florida and come up the Intercoastal Waterway and go all the way up to Bangor, Maine. So from Florida to Maine, they're traveling on the East Coast, and then they get up onto the Erie and the Hudson and find their way through the Great Lakes and downtown New York City and downtown Milwaukee and downtown Chicago, and come out of the Chicago River and flow into the Mississippi, and then right back through Paducah and coming right into the Tennessee River's Kentucky Lake. They call that the Great Loop, okay? If you look at topography and you look at America from a couple thousand feet up, and you look at all the rivers and the towns in one snapshot, one drone picture, all the waters from, and I mentioned Pittsburgh, where the Allegheny and the Monongahela all confluence. That's why NFL used to call that Three Rivers Stadium, where the Pittsburgh Steelers played.
And Neyland could just about be that because of the French Broad and the Holston.
French Broads and the Holston forming the Tennessee River. Yeah, same thing. All these stadiums all want to be right on the river because there's a navy of consumers. So you got tailgaters, you got people that sit in the seats, you got the folks that watch it on TV, and then now you've got the Navy out there with all the boats, and they all buoy up to one another. And now with technology, we've got big screen TVs and big. So life is good. Life is good. But as we're looking at America, the major river. Okay, we think the Mississippi is the largest river, and it's not.
Missouri.
The Missouri is, just by a foot or two. Okay, so let's give the Mississippi its mighty Mississippi muddy name. But if you look at everything from the East Coast and the North and the Appalachian Mountains, so when God created the Appalachians, that went from, let's say, Dahlonega, Georgia, all the way up to Bangor, Maine. Now, that's a long eastern seaboard mountain, okay? And I don't know, 2,000-3,000 miles of it. You know, it's a long hike. Yeah, you can't do it in a day. You can't even drive it in a day. But anyway, everything to the west of the peak of the Appalachian is all draining into the Mississippi. Mm-hmm. So when I was over in Japan, I've been over there 3 or 4 times with 2 or 3 different governors of Tennessee. I always go down to Kikochi Mikimoto's Island off the coast of Toba, just south of Osaka. And I'll go down there and network with Mikimoto's family, and they have a pearl tour, a pearl island. They get as many people down there as goes to Graceland. So Mikimoto in Japan is as big as Elvis is a celebrity. Okay. And a lot of men, servicemen, back during World War II, after the bombing of Pearl Harbor and the Hiroshima and the conflict between Japan and America, a lot of servicemen brought back from Japan pearls. Well, now they've been passed down for generations to generations. And pearls have been given to the female, and she would give them to the daughter when they became of age and say, these were your grandmothers, okay? And so pearls are a legacy, and they kind of like us guys, we get the BB gun or the Red Ryder wagon or the shotgun, the single-barrel shotgun, or We get our little things, but the women would give the young daughters the pearls. So this is actually a Japanese custom. So when I was over there in Mikimoto's Island and I was in his museum and talking to a lot of folks, they know this region earmarked as the Mississippi River drainage. This is where it all happens. So all the minerals and the nutrients. So theoretically, I could be on the top row of Neyland Stadium and put a note in a bottle and cork it and throw it off the edge into the Tennessee River, and it would end up in New Orleans sooner or later, okay? In the same way with the Mississippi, you could be up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where the beginning of the Mississippi River is, and actually you can walk across it and the water won't get over your kneecap. And then you get down to New Orleans and it's 20, 30 miles wide. So the mighty Mississippi is really our major seaport area. You know, New Orleans is pretty huge for seaport. And when
it's now been surpassed by Mobile.
By Mobile, that's right. And during Katrina, what was that, in '05? When New Orleans was shut down in Mobile, Memphis, Tennessee became the largest seaport in America. And here they had even manatees coming up the Mississippi to Memphis. And I know a lot of the animal rights people got a hold of the manatees to try to keep them alive there in Memphis. And Memphis is only 133 miles to the west of us, right here in Camden, here in Benton County. So the drainage, back to the drainage, and all of the minerals and the nutrients from erosion, let's just use erosion, all end up into the Mississippi from one point or another, okay? That's why we have good, clean, nutrient water, and that's why these mussels grow so well here on Kentucky Lake. Because of the nutrients that they're getting, that they couldn't get anywhere else.
If you're a business with a strong connection to history, education, travel, or place-based storytelling, and you're looking to reach an audience that values those things, we should talk. You can reach me at john.summers@summersmediaenterprises.com. Now, let's get back to our story. I think it's interesting when you were talking earlier about the TVA creating Kentucky Lake in the mid-40s, and when they impounded that ultimately is what created the set of circumstances, I believe, where you are able to have your farm here the way it is. You had the nutrients already, but it changed the temperature of the water. And the reason I bring that up is you mentioned starting with the Norris Dam, and when we go back, the freshwater pearls in Tennessee in the 1800s, late 1800s through 1936 is when it all ended. And it ended right there in Clinton because they opened Norris Dam, and it changed the temperature of the water there where the mollusks didn't thrive the way that they had previously.
They need a certain temperature,
right,
certain amount of nutrients, and they need flow, current. Let's call it just current, okay? So old stagnant water with green moss growing on it is not any good for mollusks to grow. And these mollusks were, back before TVA, they would just appear all over because they went with all the current.
Right.
We had flooding. None of us really remember, or I don't, at 75, I don't know what a flood is other than high water.
Right.
When TVA gives us more water than what we really need. But we've been pretty well protected over the years with elevation. Unlike other bodies of water, TVA has controlled, and that's flooding, okay? Mm-hmm. And I remember reading about FDR in the 30s before TVA, and cities like St. Louis and Memphis would be flooded, okay? Flooded. We get tornadoes and ice storms, and that's most recent.
You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?
Would not know anything about the flooding because there was no control. There was no control.
Right.
And TVA does a real good job. I was fortunate last year to go into the TVA headquarters, and it's kind of like going into the war room of the White House. I mean, it's very strict. And there's all the cameras and all the TVs and computers and a gang of people controlling every single drop of water in Tennessee and the tribs that feed the Tennessee River. So TVA does an excellent job in flood control, and that's what they were charged to do when the charter was enacted. I said 33, I might be 36, one of the 2 years.
Well, it would have been before 36 because 36 is when the Norris Dam opened.
Okay. So it was 33, and it was, so yeah, 36 was Norris, and it's a very tall dam, where our elevation here on Kentucky Lake goes from, the water elevation goes from 354 to 360. So we have about a 6-foot annual rise up and down, spring, summer, fall, the drawdown, the rainfall, and they calculate every drop of water.
That's
and
pretty incredible.
It is, and to see them at action, it was just.
I know, some of the smaller lakes around where I'm from over in Middle Tennessee, it's, high water versus low water across the course of the year, it's a lot more than 6 feet. A lot more. But it's not navigable the way that the Tennessee River is, and that's important to maintain that stability.
And barges. And,
Right.
Tennessee, when it was formed in, 1796?
Yep.
We were created in Tennessee for commerce and agriculture, doing business and farming.
Right.
Okay, and farming is a business.
It's in the state seal.
It's in the state of Tennessee seal. So commerce and the riverways transport a lot of grain and coal, and I've even seen one of the rockets to go on the moon that they shoot up there on the moon. Oh yeah, and down around Huntsville is one of the manufacturers,
Sure.
and up in Ohio, and you're out on the Tennessee River, and here is this barge with a gigantic space rocket, and it says United States of America and the flag already painted on it, and of course. At that time I saw it was not, cell phones hadn't been invented.
Sure.
So I'm out there with not a Brownie or an Instamatic or a Polaroid or nothing. I'm saying, man, this is really a great time to have had a camera. But to see a rocket and so
How big are the locks?
Well, the locks are 600, 800, 1,200 feet long.
Okay.
And so how big is the rocket that's going to the moon?
That's my question. Making sure that the locks are big enough to handle that.
They are, and so everything is being transported inexpensively on the rivers because we connect to the Ohio and the Mississippi and the Missouri River and the Great Lakes and so it's incredible, the water system.
Well, from a logistics standpoint, the cost per ton for transporting by water is a fraction of what it is by air or even by truck. It's just that, you don't always have water going exactly where you need to go into the hinterland, so to speak, but where it goes, it's cheaper to go by water.
And TVA, when they were created, they built all these power plants along the rivers, Tennessee, predominantly the Tennessee River, and they fired them up with coal because we have an abundance amount of coal in the eastern part of Kentucky. Okay, so they dig the coal out, they put it on the barges, and the barges float around to all the different coal-fired steam plants. Well, that's been a congressional and presidential football between the Democrats and the Republicans, and who wants clean air and who wants electricity and who wants all the different factors that make electricity using coal. All right. So currently we have a tiff with some of our steam plants that were getting torn down, and now they wish they hadn't torn them down and wish they would still make more electricity because AI, okay, well, that's a new word, isn't it?
Sure.
AI needs more power.
Right.
And TVA has only been able to build so much power or produce so much power. So now they say, wow, we sure wish we hadn't torn down. And like one of my steam plants is right here close to me called New Johnsonville. Well, they've leveled it off and made a golf course in it. Okay, technically, no.
Right.
But anyway, there's no more steam plant. We're not making any more electricity there, but they're changing their way of making electricity by going to propane or nitrogen or other types of chemicals to make electricity other than coal. So there's a lot of unrest in the Tennessee Valley. Mm-hmm. But that's a new subject. That's all of its own. Talking about TVA.
So let's go back to the guy that you worked with, and John
Latendresse,
right.
And his wife's name was Chessy, and she's still living. Mr. Latendresse passed in 2000. He's born in 1925 and passed away in 2000.
So he came. So the interesting thing that I remember from the tour is he grew up near here.
He did, 5 miles from here.
Right. Searched all over the country to find out that the best spot in North America, of North America, was 5 miles from where he grew up.
And back then, when he was planning on putting the Pearl Farm in, and he was a pioneer, so he's like the Henry Ford of the automobile, all righty? In fact, I was driving the pontoon boat, and I had an ABC person on board the boat, Barbara Walters, and she was interviewing Mr. Latendresse. And here out into the Pearl Farm was all of these producers for ABC's 2020. So I'm dating myself way back then. Today we've got a news notebook every night on every network. But back then you only watched
Dateline 2020, that was about it.
Yeah, and ABC's 2020. So Barbara Walters had the microphone up and said, well, Mr. Latendresse, this is a Japanese custom, and you married a Japanese woman, and you brought the custom from Japan to America. And aren't you afraid that we're going to have some unrest between the two countries, especially after World War II? He said, well, Henry Ford invented the automobile, and look what the Japanese have done to the automobile industry. Okay, so he kind of put her in her spot, and me, I'm just like, 25 years old, and so this is 50 years ago. So I'm thinking, what does that mean? What is Barbara Walters getting at? But anyway, we've had a real close, good relationship. The daughter is still doing our pearl jewelry designing. She's a gemologist and a GIA certified gemology person because we're a gem. The pearl is a gem.
Right.
Okay. And so that's all we've tried to sell here at our museum and jewelry showroom is pearls. Now, of course, I've got a few things for the men like pearl-handled case knives.
Sure.
Something for the guy to look.
If you enjoy the way we tell stories here on the Tennessee History Nerd, there's another show you might want to check out, Dauphin Island Diaries. Same approach, different setting. Stories from the Gulf Coast, rooted in place and built from the sources up. You can find it wherever you're listening right now. And now, back to our story.
Anyway, the jewelry industry and another famous person with a piece of jewelry is is Elizabeth Taylor. And Elizabeth Taylor, she had a lot of money, okay, and she married Mr. Burton several times, twice, okay. And she was born in London and in 1932, so right after our World War I. And then she passed away in 2011. Well, one day, I'd say 2008 or 9, I get a phone call from a photojournalist team from London, and they were tracing the pearl that Elizabeth Taylor has, called La Peregrina. Well, La Peregrina was found off the coast of Panama in 1510, okay, by a Spanish sailor, Balboa. Well, 1510, and now Elizabeth Taylor has it, and she got it in 1969. So Elizabeth Taylor receives this one pearl that was found off the coast of Panama in 1510. Well, this team of photojournalists was tracing the pearl since Elizabeth was born in London, and they were trying to trace the genealogy of the one pearl. Well, they had it had been brought from Panama to England and given to a ruler, and then it went through a process of a lot of royal hands, ending up in a duke's hand in England, and Richard Burton bought it from the duke and paid $36,000 for the one pearl. Okay. And then Elizabeth was giving that pearl with a necklace that was designed by Cartier Jewelers out of New York. So this team from London came down here and interviewed me. And I said, well, I know a little bit about it. I knew that Elizabeth Taylor's necklace and the pearls that came with the necklace came from the Tennessee River here. And they wanted to know how I knew that. And I said, well, Mr. Latendresse was instrumental in selling these pearls to Cartier Jewelers in New York. Well, Elizabeth got the pearl from Richard on Valentine's Day. And the courier who went to London and picked it up for Cartier was 19 years old, or 21, somewhere real young, and it was like his first day on the job. So I guess his boss said, well, get on a plane here in New York, fly to London, pick the pearl up, and bring it back. Well, he brings it back to Los Angeles, where Richard and Elizabeth had a condo, and back then they had shag carpeting. Today, we have what, Berber? Okay, so there's a big difference in the shag carpeting. And Elizabeth has these little poodle dogs. Well, they were all having maybe an adult beverage and was having a good frolicking good time, and they dropped the pearl that was found off the coast of Panama in 1510, and it fell in the carpeting, and one of the little foo-foo dogs picked it up. Well, imagine her entourage all crawling around on your hands and knees looking for the little poodle, and they grabbed a hold of it by the tail, and out popped the pearl. Well, the courier, you can imagine it was his first day on the job, Now I'm probably exaggerating a little bit, but this is really good story. And so he calls his boss up and he said, "Boss, you're not going to believe what's this that happened." "What's that?" "Well, we dropped the pearl. It went in the carpet. The dog ate the pearl, and now we've got the pearl back." And he said, "Well, you just get on the next plane and fly to Nashville, Tennessee, where then you'll rent a car and drive to Camden, Tennessee, and you'll meet up with a man by the name of John R. Latendresse. He's the only man in America that knows anything about pearls." So he brings the pearl to Mr. Latendresse. Of course, Mr. Latendresse didn't know that pearl was going to be on the neck of Elizabeth Taylor. Okay, so I guess that wasn't disclosed. So he looked at the pearl and x-rayed it and said, the pearl's fine. The dog didn't do any damage to it. And he said, "By the way, let me just talk to your boss." So he calls the boss up in New York at Cartier Jewelers, and he said, "By the way, I've got a bunch of pearls to sell you." So these pearls that are adorning the neck of Elizabeth Taylor, along with the one pearl from Panama in 1510, was all originated right here in Camden, Tennessee. And her picture is in this National Geographic that I mentioned earlier, August edition in 1985, when our first pearls came out, and they did 38 pages about pearls. Probably the single most piece ever written has been on the pearl, has been in this National Geographic in August of 85. And there's her full page picture. So people have asked me over the years, well, what was Balboa doing in Panama in 1510? Well,
Conquistador.
Well, I think, this is what I think, back then, everybody thought that the world was flat. So the people that had education in 1500, 1400, well, they were from England, or from Belgium and Portugal and Spain, okay? They had colleges going on. I mean, they were educated.
Well, you're talking at 1510, you're looking at 18 years after Columbus's first voyage over here.
Well, you had Columbus and you had Ponce de Leon and
yeah, but they were all, I mean, that was, at that point, they matter of fact, I think Columbus died still thinking he found the western route to the Indies.
Well,
but
that geography, it was to prove, I guess, the rulers of Portugal and Spain, the rulers said, go prove whether the world is round or flat.
Right.
Okay? We take the world is round easy because we know it's not flat.
But there are those today even.
So anyway, they're all down there having a little clam bake and
yep.
probably homemade wine and having a big Cajun boil, so to speak. And they found this one pearl. So just like any good employee, it's lost and found. I'm going to take it back to my ruler, and he just throws it in a dresser drawer. And, 300 years later, here comes Richard Burton. Okay. Great story.
It is a great story.
And we're proud to show that, pictures of Elizabeth. And in fact, right before she passed, she put out her own coffee table, big, huge, 10-pound heavy book on all of her gorgeous jewelry. And every story that went with her jewelry, from Cleopatra and the King and I, and all the different movies that she was in, there's a story behind each piece of pearl, or each piece of her jewelry. And her most favorite piece was this one piece called La Peregrina. When she died, the estate sold all the jewelry for an undisclosed amount. But we know that Richard paid $36,000 for the one pearl.
For one
pearl. Yeah.
And
that doesn't include anything else, the work and any.
So let's if you don't mind, talk a little bit about how freshwater pearls come into existence. You've got these mollusks here. Can you talk a little bit about the process that John brought back from
Japan?
From Japan, where they do that. What's his name?
Mickey Moto.
That process where they seed, and I mean, when you look at some of the things that you've got in your case here, it's really interesting. I mean, I always thought of pearls being round, but you've got different shapes, and a lot of that has to do with how you seed them, and so.
That's correct. Basically, the pearl comes from the animal. So the animal produces a pearl by two ways. Either God has allowed the animal to grow a pearl. Okay, so that becomes naturally, and we call those pearls natural pearls. Pretty simple. Then we've learned through the process from the Japanese how to implant or cultivate or farm or seed or insert. So we take a piece of material from a live one to make a shape. Well, how many shapes are in a thick geometry book? So if you wanted a triangular pearl, we would have to make a triangular seed and insert that seed into a live animal and we hang it out on a net, and we wait 5 to 8 years, and we allow it to grow. So as the animal is growing from, let's say, 4 inches in diameter up to maybe 8 inches, so think about it like a small fruit growing bigger and bigger, and after it's 8 inches in diameter, then we go out and harvest it. We cut it open, and there's our triangular pearl that has been coated with the inside of the mollusk, and that's called nacre, N-A-C-R-E. And I like to explain nacre like we would be making caramel apples at Halloween. Okay, so we take an ordinary apple and we stick a stick in it, and we go over here to our double burner and we melt all this beautiful sweet caramel, and we dip the apple in the caramel and we pull it out and we put it on wax paper and we let it cool. That apple is coated with this caramel. So think about that like the pearl. We insert the apple inside of a live mollusk, and it's triangle, it's small, and we wait for the mollusk to coat it and put the caramel over the coating. Okay. Now, the more you stick the apple into the caramel, you get another layer and another layer and another layer. And so it's like going to an antique car show, and you can look down into that candy apple red color of that 57 Chevrolet Bel Air, 2-door, and then just say, wow, how did they get that Imron or whatever brand of paint there is to look that deep? Those are layers after layers after layers. And people that paint,
a lot of clear coat.
A lot of clear coat, and you just stand back in amazement. How'd they do that?
Right.
Okay. Well, the animal produces his interior. He's an animal, so he's got meat. Okay. He opens up. He's a bivalve. He breathes. He absorbs. Okay. And he reproduces. He can reproduce himself 1 million times per year, and he'll last to be 100 years old. So the animal at age, say, 3 or 4, he's an adult. So he can theoretically produce 96 million babies in his lifetime. And that's, I think, as we look back in Genesis in the Bible, and we can say, well, God created this animal to live in the water. The rest of the animals, where do they live? On the earth. They're on top. The cows and the sheep and the horses, they all live on the top. He created this one animal to do nothing but one thing, and that's to filter the water. So our world is 2/3 water. So us living on the earth, we're the minority compared to the water. And let's think back 10, 15 years ago. We've got a jumbo 757 Asian jet airliner that we can't even find. But yet we're up on the moon eating bologna sandwiches, okay? And we can't find a jumbo jet airliner. And we've all, between us and Australia and China and I don't know, all the other countries have looked for that jumbo with 200 or 300 Asian souls on the plane. And it's somewhere, and I guess Google Earth doesn't even fly over that. The satellite doesn't even fly over that portion of the eye, or I don't know, but you can catch my drift here. Mm-hmm. So the animal is blessed with making his internal self bigger, nacre, and that gets him bigger and bigger and bigger, because at birth he's a tiny microscopic cell about the size of a pinhead, but yet he can grow as big as a 10 or 15-inch dinner plate, okay, in his lifetime. So he goes from practically nothing to something really big. And in the process, he can be implanted either naturally or by culturing, by farming. And that's what we've learned from the Japanese, how to farm. And the natural process is when the mollusk opens his shell and his body comes out, he's still attached. So he's like a turtle, okay? You got the turtle crawling around, and You come up from the back end of a turtle and you can pick him up. If you come to the front end, he sees you and then he clams all up and hunkers in and protects himself. So the mollusk kind of is like the turtle, but he doesn't have any eyes, so he can't see you. He can feel. He's all about feel. So the mollusk is opened up and a tiny little fish swims by and touches him. Well, he hunkers in, clams up, and when he does, he traps that little minnow inside him, and he lives there forever, like we would rub our hand over an old oak board and get a splinter. Now, that's a foreign object, and we've got sense enough to pull it out. The mollusk doesn't have sense to pull it out. He can't discharge it. It's there. That little minnow, so to speak, something that's got a vertebra and something that's got a bloodstream. He swims into that mollusk and he's trapped. And the mollusk just grows over him like as if we would leave our splinter in our hand. We would still grow. That's where the natural pearl comes in. Well, how do you know that one's in there? Okay, if that one mollusk can make 1 million babies a year, you're not out there opening up all of them like a bunch of Cracker Jack boxes looking for the prize inside. We don't do that because pearls are not that expensive. They start out at around $10 or $15 a pearl. It's all the diamonds and the gold and the silver and the jewelry that drives up a pearl necklace. And in the case of the one found off the coast of Panama in 1510, Richard Burton paid $36,000 for that pearl. And I heard that that necklace sold for $11.6 million at auction.
In that case, it was the size of that one pearl.
One size and the genealogy. That you can trace that back,
right. So the uniqueness
drove that price up.
Right.
Now, what if we just opened up a mollusk today and there that size was valued probably several $1,000s, but not way up there.
Not 36.
Not 36,000, and definitely not 11.6 million for the whole necklace.
And that's 36 in those
in 1969.
Yeah.
So what's that worth today? So that's the difference on a natural pearl versus a cultured pearl. And what we're doing here is just one operation, one farming outlet in North America. That's Freshwater. Now there's another saltwater pearl farm down there real close to where the Mexicans is having some unrest around Puerto Vallarta, little town called Guaymas, and that's from the University of Monterey, has got an experimental station down there, and they're in the Sea of Cortez, and there's a pearl farm down there, but they're all saltwater.
And so, to make it very clear to our listeners, this is the only freshwater pearl producer in all of North America.
That's right, and we've tried to have other outlets, but we'd rather do one thing real good at one location than be spread out. There used to be 2 or 3 different pearl farms. You're trying to create a market.
Sure.
Once again,
Scarcity.
This is a new market. Pearls have been around since kings and queens and go back to the 4th and 5th century. And there's been a lot of beautiful jewelry, but nobody has ever put a value. Where's the market? We've created our own market. So we have something unique. It's fun to come and watch. We've got a video. CBS Sunday Morning with Charles Osgood sent Rita Braver down here. She's still on Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley in today's CBS market. And so they came down and they filmed us. And our exhibit was at the Museum of Natural History in New York in Manhattan. And this man by the name of Neil Landman, he's an archaeologist. He's also a paleontologist. He's the curator of the museum. They've got a couple of hundred employees. And he put together all the precious pearls of the world. The Jackie Kennedys, the Mary Queen of Scots, the Elizabeth Taylors, the Marilyn Monroes, Barbara Bush, and the list goes on. And he put on one of these exhibits that was at the Museum of Natural History that later went on to Chicago, went on to Houston, Atlanta, Milwaukee, and then traveled to the Pacific Rim and went to London and Manila and Tokyo and all over the world, our exhibit. And he came down and got our pearls from us to put in the exhibit. So we were in good company with Liz and Jackie and Barbara and Marilyn. And
rubbing elbows
with the rich and famous right here from Camden, Tennessee. And so we're so proud of Benton County here in West Tennessee.
If you've been enjoying the Tennessee History Nerd, there's a way to take a little piece of it with you. We've got merchandise available, shirts, hats, and more, so you can represent the show wherever you go. You can check that out at summersmediaenterprises.com/merch. And as always, thanks for listening. Now, let's return to the story.
And by the way, the Tennessee River separates one of the two grand divisions of the three, Middle, East, and West. So half of the river is in Middle Tennessee and the other half of the river is in West Tennessee. And the bridge crossing it at I-40 is at the mile 134 mile marker, and we're at 133. So we're the very first exit going west, leaving out of Nashville.
Just almost as soon as you come off the bridge.
That's right. Yeah, the state has put 3 lanes there, so now you get into the far right lane because you're going to get off real soon.
Yeah, because you got the trucker lane there.
Trucker lane.
Because as you're going up off of the bridge, you've got where the ground rises up from the river, going up the riverbank, so to speak. So
and we also have cabins here, and a lot of people come take our little tour. By the way, it's free. It's open Monday and Tuesdays, and Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We're closed on Wednesday and Sunday, and folks can come watch the video. It's free. Look around at the exhibits. We've wanted it to be free and allow people to enjoy the education side of it, because this is something new, for a lot of folks that didn't know where pearls came from. They don't know how they grew. And our staff here answers a lot of the questions.
And let me go ahead and say to that point also, because I'm one of those people who, we came over in December and took the tour, and we were the only ones here that day because it's kind of the off season, but they have a tremendous amount of educational material they send home with you. I mean, they've got little gift bags that they give you that have all kinds of information in there about the history of what happened here with John Latendresse creating this with the Keast family here at Birdsong, and the information they've got. Well, just to be clear, for those of you who are, I'm going to say that this is going out to people who are outside of Tennessee. Those who are in Tennessee, you'll know what I'm talking about here. But the state of Tennessee, the government of Tennessee, produces a book that has all kinds of information about the state of Tennessee. It's called the Blue Book.
And it's free.
Just
write your senator or state representative or the governor's office.
Right. If you are a citizen of Tennessee, it's free. You can get that copy of that, and so yes, but they're in there. To the point that Bob made earlier about the state gem is the freshwater pearl. That's why. I mean, and it's because it comes from here. It originated here, and like we said earlier, it started over in East Tennessee. It died. TVA killed it over there. They created the circumstances here where it could be resurrected, so to speak, and so it's here. So let's talk a little bit. You've got the farm here. How often do you harvest mollusks?
We harvest mollusks when we have big tours. Now, what's a big tour? Well, we get a lot of small tours. And a small tour is mom and dad and 2 or 3 children or whatever. And so when we get a busload, a motor coach, bunch of senior citizens. Then we go out to the farm and we bring in a net. And the net has been implanted many years ago. And we take and open up that mollusk, and you get to witness the live animal producing a pearl. So you're right on top of it, and get your cameras and you can photograph it and that kind of thing. Because we have to implant that piece of foreign material, and it's from another animal. So it's wrapped with tissue. It's kind of like getting burnt. You go to the doctor, you get in a house fire and you're burnt, and the doctor grafts your skin with a new layer of skin. Well, where does he get the skin? He doesn't get it on a roll of like paper towels. He doesn't go to the shelf and yeah, give me this color skin. I've got to fix old Bob up or Joe. So he takes maybe a piece of skin from your butt or your back or somewhere that's not seen, and then he skin grafts it onto your arm or your face or somewhere that you're still good looking. So we do kind of the same thing. We take a piece of skin from the inside of the mollusk, and the inside of a mollusk, and we call them mussels. The family is a mollusk, and the oyster is the same thing. So the oyster is an animal that's the brother to the mussel, and the mussel is freshwater, and the oyster is saltwater. And what's the difference? Salt and geography. Okay, now Tennessee is a freshwater state. Florida is fresh and salt, so it's got both. It's got, as I mentioned, the St. John River around the Orlando area, and then it's got the Gulfs and the Caribbean and so forth. And then the ocean, it's still got the Atlantic on the eastern side. So anyway, the waters that these animals grow are natural waters. These animals grow all the time, and they're native. And as we look at of where these mollusks originated, they were here long before man was. And man built the dam, which allowed those mussels that were already here to stay already at their same location. So they just built a dam before and or after. Okay. Right. And in the case of our lake here of the Tennessee River. So what you've got is Wilson, Wheeler, Chickamauga, Nickajack, all of these rivers. All of this is the Tennessee River, and each one of the dams create a different lake,
right?
Because they're a man-made lake,
right? And
when you get up into East Tennessee, you mentioned Clinton and the Clinch River, which feeds into the Tennessee.
Right.
These mussels were there before TVA.
Oh, yes.
And so they grew and grew and grew, and back in the 20s or the early teens or the turn of the 1900s, they just didn't know what they were. They used the mussel for buttons. So man needed buttons. Well, the military had the brass and they had the wood buttons. Okay. Well, somebody said, well, we need to put mother of pearl, and we get them plentiful out of the shell. So they would drag the river. They would drag the river, and a brailer would stick his brails down in the bottom and go downstream with the current, and he would these mussels would grab onto the brail, and he would winch the brail up and put them in the boat and then go to shore, and he'd put them in a big metal vat, and put a fire up underneath and cook the shell and the mussel meat, and then they'd find pearl. Well, what did they do? They put them in a old mason jar, and they weren't after the pearl. The pearl industry wasn't invented. So what do you do with this white thing that looks shiny? And the inside of a mussel is beautiful. It has iridescent coloring. And in Tennessee, we've identified at least over 100 different species of the mussel shell. And some are just gorgeous, and pinks and purples and blues and the greens and browns. So the colors is what is pretty, and they're iridescent. So they're just gorgeous in coloring. And so what did the guy in 1900? He was just out there for the shell and selling the shell to a button manufacturer, because plastic had not been invented yet. So we're trying to get everybody a piece of clothing and got buttons on them. So there's a lot of people and a lot of clothing. And then somebody invented plastic. So the mussel industry fell flat. Nobody wanted them. What good is a mussel? He doesn't need to make a button anymore. And I mentioned a lot of women still have their great-grandmother's old coats or dresses that still have that beautiful mother of pearl. And I'm sure maybe a fine dress store like Saks Fifth Avenue or Neiman and Marcus or any of the high-dollar ladies' apparel, still you could buy mother of pearl buttons. And look at the music industry. All your guitars have mother of pearl inlay, and they're just gorgeous, and they sparkle, and they look good on television, and they look good on stage. So we're still in the marketplace. And like I mentioned about Case knives and other brands of knives, they use the mother of pearl. And the pistols, the guns, I got pearl-handled Colt 45 or whatever. Mm-hmm. So the pearl is something unique, and grown right here on the Tennessee River is just something special. And the more you learn about it, the more you're going to get out of it. There's a new museum in Nashville, Tennessee, up by the Sounds baseball stadium in North Nashville, very close to the Bicentennial Mall, and not Charlotte, but the Jefferson Street. The museum there is called the Library and Archives, and it was downtown at the foot of the Capitol, on Charlotte, but they built this brand new $25 million plus building. And all your birth records and your death records and divorces and all of those records are kept. And plus the state of Tennessee's Constitution. And this is a gorgeous new building. And of course it's free. And they've got a gift shop and everything there where you can get more publications and books and so forth. But anything of value has been stored there, and it's right next to the Tennessee State Museum, that used to be right at the foot of the Capitol, going south.
Used to be in T-Pack.
Yeah, right there at T-Pack. And so these two museums are real close up there, and they're standalone now. But the Library and Archives has a 20-foot tall, engraved, etched, inlaid of our Tennessee River pearl, mussel, and all the pearls in it. That's about 10 foot wide and about 20 foot tall, and it's right at the front entrance going into the museum on the west side on the 8th Avenue. I guess that's Rosa Parks Boulevard. And so when they were building the building, the architect, probably from Franklin or somewhere, called me up and said, "Hey, I need a picture of your mussel and your pearl." And I just happened to have one that our state photographer, Jed DeCab, he's retired from the state as the chief photographer. He had made a picture down here one year, and we used that picture to go on the wall. So whenever you're going into the museum or Library and Archives, be sure to look to the right of the door and up a little bit and hear this big, beautiful mussel with all these pearls laying in it, and it's in purple. And so it's
awesome.
It's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. So we're, our legacy continues. You know what I'm saying? It's it's something that our great grandkids can. Plus, it's got all the governors of Tennessee up there, from John Sevier all the way up to Governor Lee. Every governor, and all the state bird, the mockingbird, and the tulip poplar, and the iris, and I guess the fish is either the largemouth or the big catfish. They can't figure out which which fish to use. But there's the raccoon, and so we're up there with all the other things that make Tennessee what it is today.
So before we wrap up, I do want to make sure that we have for the people who are listening to this and are interested? First of all, we already know I-40, exit 133, Birdsong Road. You're about 9-10 miles from that exit right up Birdsong Road going toward Camden. But what is your website address?
Birdsong, www.birdsong.com. That's BIRDSONG. And from there, you can go to all the pearls, the histories, and we've been online and been on the internet since, Al Gore invented it.
Right.
Sorry, I just had to throw that in.
Okay, and you have a Facebook page.
Yeah, it's Birdsong Resort and Marina. And
you have a YouTube channel.
Yeah, we're doing that now. We're just now getting into the YouTube.
So they just look for Birdsong?
It's easier to send everybody to Birdsong, and from that, we call that our hub. That's we've been here since the late 40s, and so, that's our grassroots. And from there, we keep expanding because we're really running about 8 or 9 businesses with the resort, the marina, the campground, the yacht club, boat sales, boat service, cabin rentals, mobile home park.
I don't think you've got enough to do. I think you need more activities.
Well, it takes it all. It's diversification.
Sure.
It's like a restaurant. You can't just make hot dogs.
Right.
And think you're going to survive, And you look at a farmer, and he's kind of the same way. I used to goose hunt in southern Illinois, and I'd go up there to a little town up there, and they called themselves the goose capital of the world. Okay, so it's flat land, and so you back in those days, you rented one of the farmer's rooms in his house, and the wife fed you, and then they would load you up on a wagon and pull the tractor and pull you and put you in one of these flat little blinds made out of corn stalks and a bench, and you sat there and waited till the goose came off the refuge, and then boom, boom, you shot your one goose, and they would come and pick the goose up and take it back and pluck it and cut it up and freeze it and hand it to you when you got ready to go home. So I was talking with Farmer Joe and his wife, and I said, this is a pretty good thing. He said, we make more money with tourism than we do farming.
And I don't doubt that, because farming's a hard way to make a living.
It is. And Tennessee is blessed with all of our farming opportunities that we have. And we're also blessed with FFA, the Future Farmers of America, and the UT extension agencies, and how UT has gotten behind all the agencies in every county. So we've still got a lot of farming. I'm the only aquaculture. See, they're all agriculture. And so I'm the one only. We're tourism. Tourism is serious business, and we rank in the state compared to the other 49 states. We're up there in the top 10 of most visitation coming to Tennessee for whether it's Elvis or Dolly or Pearls or country music or Hank Williams or whomever. There's a reason for everything, and Tennessee is so blessed with its diversification.
Well, part of it is it's not a very tall state, but it sure is wide.
It's wide,
So people got to go through it.
One place or another, going east to west or north to south. And you can leave Memphis and go to Bristol, and you can leave Bristol and go to Canada, and phone one another when you get to your destination, and you won't be 3 to 5 minutes apart.
Yeah, it's actually closer, I'm told, from Bristol to the Canadian border than it is from Bristol to Memphis. So that's pretty amazing when you stop and think about just how far it is across, because it's not like it's a hop and a skip to get from Bristol to the Canadian border. But it's still closer than Bristol is to Memphis. That just gives you an idea of just how broad the state is.
And we've got all these welcome centers along the way around Bristol and Chattanooga and Smith County, going toward Knoxville and Chattanooga, and up around Clarksville and Dyersburg. So all the major entry points of Tennessee has got a staffed welcome center with all the brochures And if you need a reservation or something, you can go in there. And I know when I went to Florida, they've got orange juice. So you get in there and you can sit down at some of their tables and read brochures and talk to the hostesses and drink all the orange juice you want. Tennessee, I don't think there's one thing that everybody loves. Maybe it's Jack Daniels or George Dickel or...
Well, there's a host of them now that they've listed those restrictions. For years, it was, pretty much my whole life until the last 8 or 10 years, there was only 2. They're only like 30 miles, maybe tops, from each other. Dickel and Jack Daniels are not far at all.
Yeah, one's in Tullahoma.
Right.
George Dickel's in Tullahoma, and Jack is in Lynchburg. Mm-hmm. Been to both places. We've also got a rum distillery. We have rum, and of course there's a lot of wineries.
Oh yeah.
There's a winery, and everybody's got one.
Yeah. So, well, Bob, I really appreciate the time today.
Yeah. My pleasure.
And I really appreciate the conversation. And
let me throw my phone number out there.
Okay.
It's area code 731-584-7880. And that'll ring at my home or my office. So, call me anytime.
Will that also ring at this table?
Yeah, it'll ring. It'll ring everywhere. Yes, it's already rung once or twice.
So, really, go ahead and say that again, just in case.
731-584-7880. And we're on Central Time, by the way. A lot of folks get us confused with the eastern part of the state.
Right.
That's at mile marker 340.
Right.
340 on I-40 is where the time zone changes from Central to Eastern.
Well, if you're going down I-24...
I-24, yeah.
And you head toward Chattanooga, it's right after you cross the Tennessee River that you change into the other time zone. So that may be where the confusion comes from.
Yeah, it could be. It could be.
But coming to the western part of the state, it still stays in the Central Time Zone. It's only the eastern third that's in the Eastern Time Zone.
Yeah.
So.
And the state is divided up into 3 grand divisions, Middle, East, and West. Mm-hmm. And so, as I mentioned earlier, the Tennessee River here in Middle and West Tennessee is the division line,
right,
where the 340-mile marker of I-40 going to Knoxville, going east, that's where it divides the Middle Tennessee with the Eastern Tennessee.
It basically is very close to where the time zone changes.
Well, that is, at 340, mile marker.
Right.
Right outside of Crossville.
You know what I'm saying? That's also the grand divisions.
Yes.
What changes when you cross over into the Eastern Time Zone, you cross over into East Tennessee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I guess our forefathers had this all figured out long before we got here.
Again, I want to say thank you to Bob and to the Tennessee River Freshwater Pearl Museum for hosting us today and allowing us to have this conversation with him. Man, this has been a lot of information that we've covered in this time that we've
this short period of time we've got a lot of information out there, and there's more to come. I mean, we could do an elder hostel here where all the seniors come and they stay and they learn something every day.
Sure.
And eat and then we go out on the lake.
Another business opportunity for you.
And we've got a lot of Civil War history with Nathan Bedford Forrest, and he had a battle here at Johnsonville, Tennessee, which is just 5 or 6 miles from here.
We do appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
The Tennessee History Nerd is part of Summers Media Enterprises. In addition to the podcast, we produce short-form historical video content that you can find on our social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, and X. And I'm also available on a limited basis for speaking engagements, presentations, and educational events. So if you're interested in having us to speak or collaborate with you, you can find more information through the links in the show notes. Thanks again for listening.